Hi, and welcome to another sneak peek Saturday at the Alameda Free Library. My name is Jenny, and today we're going to read the first chapter, not quite the first full chapter, of a nonfiction book, and it's called Come Fly With Me, the Dread Age Story of the Women of Pan Am. And it is written by Julia Cooke. And first thing I'm gonna show you is it has some really cool maps here. Right, and then I'm going to read you the inside here, the little book flap first, just so you know what the book is about. So, glamour, danger, liberation. In a madman era of commercial flight, Pan Am World Airways attracted young women who wanted out and wanted up. Required to have a college education, speak two languages, and possess the political savvy of a foreign service officer, a jet age stewardess serving on iconic Pan Am between 1966 and 1975 also had to be between 5'3" and 5'9", between 105 and 140 pounds, and under 26 years of age at the time of hire. Cooke's intimate storytelling weaves together the lives of a memorable cast of characters, from small-town girl Lynn Totten, a science major who decided life in a lab was not for her, to Hazel Bowie, one of the relatively few black stewardesses of the era, as they embraced the liberation of their new jet-set life. Cooke brings to light Pan Am stewardesses' unseen role in the Vietnam War, as the airline ferried young American soldiers into combat and added runs to carry weary troops to brief R&R stints. Finally, the Operation Baby Lift, the dramatic evacuation of 2,000 children during the fall of Saigon. The book's shaped cast of stewardesses unites to play an extraordinary role on the world stage. All right. So the book is dedicated to her father. So it says, "For my father, and the window seats he saved for me." How sweet is that? We got a table of contents, so you can take a look ahead. And as I mentioned, the maps. That was really cool. All right, part 1. The wrong kind of girl. A jet-age job. Lynn Totten stood in the doorway for what felt like a very long time, looking at the women sitting in rows in front of her. Only minutes before, she had walked confidently down Park Avenue to the Pan Am building, on an octagonal skyscraper of broad faceted glass and concrete. As Lynn approached the 59-story building's shadow, she took in the enormous letters of the company's name at its crown. She'd walked through the Pan Am lobby and taken the elevator up to the offices above, as if she knew where she was going and what she was doing. Now Lynn stood facing bouffants and elegant French twists. As she headed to the front of the room, she saw the faces of women who wore them. Perfect eye makeup. Lynn, short and dainty in her brown skirt suit, with long dark hair down her back, she had not thought to pull it up into a bun, considered the reality of where she stood, waiting to be interviewed for a job as a stewardess. "How can you change a world you've never seen?" an A Pan Am magazine ad read. This was a yearning that had sent Lynn to the interview. On television, the same campaign asked, "Why don't you join the country club?" A golfer on a green field was quickly surrounded by people in varied international-looking clothing, men in striped shirts of Italian Vaporetto, drivers or in Baroque military jackets, women in Japanese yukata. Big countries, small countries, old countries, new countries. But another Pan Am advertisement, frequently aired in 1969, might have sent Lynn walking away just as quickly as she'd come. A gorgeous woman with flawlessly applied eye makeup, brushing mascara on her lashes, and then striding down the street as the camera panned up from the sidewalk, taking in the stewardess's perfectly cut blue suit, her tidy purse, her hair in precise waves under her hat. When Lynn considered how she must look to the assembled crowd of aspiring stewardesses, country bumpkin was a term that came to mind. Lynn had grown up in Baldwinsville, 13 miles outside of Syracuse, on the twisting Seneca River. In the summer, when the sun lit the streets long into evening, children came home only briefly for dinner, then went back out. Baldwinsville was an overgrown suburb with a quaint village of 2- and 3-story brick buildings, shade trees glowing orange and yellow on autumn afternoons, and church steeples of various Christian denominations rising above it all. Until right now, Lynn had felt sure that this job was what she wanted. Her parents had worked hard to send her, the bright and promising student, body president of her small town high school, obedient and optimistic, to college, the first one in their family to go. Lynn was grateful, but at college her awareness of how lucky she was competed with a bone-deep dissatisfaction for the lab work her biology major required. She was not always the only woman haunting the lab at the State University of New York at Oswego late in the night, but she rarely saw more than one other woman around. As far as she knew, she was the only female biology major in her year. In the lab, she barely glanced at the young men blending and separating compounds. Lynn paid strict attention to her own measurements. She harbored diffuse fears of blowing the building up. "Why are you here?" the man asked Lynn. It could have been intended as a compliment, but for a pretty woman under artificial lab lights, but the words had a hectoring edginess. For Lynn, declaring a major was a promise, and she did not break promises. She spent 4 years in class and in the lab and acquired 2 assistantships to keep herself afloat financially, including one working with soil samples for a palynology professor. Lynn was good at extracting 100-year-old pollen from soil. It impressed her that pollen could not be destroyed and would always provide a map of the past. But beneath her commitment to her biology major, her gratitude to her parents, and her determination in the face of the subtle intimidation in the labs, Lynn had doubts. Sometimes she wondered what she was doing, what she was preparing for, especially as she learned about the world outside of upstate New York. In Baldwinsville, around the dinner table on Sundays, when her parents closed the general store they owned to eat together as a family, international politics never came up. But at the coffee shops and diners in Oswego, Lynn's peers debated government policy ardently. Combat in Vietnam escalated throughout Lynn's undergraduate years, and Lynn listened to her college boyfriend and his friends discussing the war. The first few times they challenged the decisions President Johnson and Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara were making in Washington, she felt uneasy. Who were they to question figures of authority, she asked. They were male college seniors in the United States. They answered. Their draft numbers and the end of their deferment upon graduation entitled them to question the government. Around the country and the world, in West Berlin, Sweden, Mexico City, students had begun to protest a war that Lynn learned had never been declared a war by Congress. Now she realized that covert American intervention in the region went back decades to the Second World War and the decolonization that followed, separating Vietnam into North and South. Communism ruled in the USSR, Allied North. A nominally democratic regime ruled in the South. American interests in the region centered on natural resources. Vietnam's tin, tungsten, and rubber, and the fear of what President Eisenhower had called a decade earlier the falling domino principle. Between schools and jobs, Lynn had little time to read newspapers, but she listened as her boyfriend honed his arguments, incorporating information gleaned from local and national newspapers and his political science coursework. He and his friends drained cup after stained coffee cup during heated debate. Two perspectives on the American troops that flooded into South Vietnam emerged. From one angle, American aid to the democratic half of a split Vietnam represented the nation's commitment to helping the residents of a small, poor country resist a communist insurgency. From another, deteriorating conditions in the South, anti-democratic elections, political arrests that kept prisons continually stuffed, a hampered press, corruption of the military and government, and deepening poverty demonstrated the essential imperialist nature of growing American intervention. As one semester led to the next, Lynn's reluctance to second-guess national policy faded and grew into a conviction that she could do more in the real world than in her lab. In her scant free time, she glanced at the front pages of newspapers and magazines and saw names of countries she had never thought about before. There's a whole world out there, she thought, and I need to get involved. And that's where I'm going to end it. If you would like to check out this book, you can go to our website, place a hold on it, and then give us a ring to come pick it up. Pick a time to come pick it up. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. And I see you next Saturday. Thank you for listening. Bye.